The Last of Us Part 1 has been making the rounds in and out of the gaming industry's ether for a while now. After being leaked/confirmed during the Summer Games Fest of 2022, many started to question as to why the 2013 masterpiece is being remade at all, since to many, the original still holds up quite well. It's safe to say that remakes have become quite the hot topic as of late. Examples such as Resident Evil 2 and Final Fantasy VII have been widely praised for completely reimagining and expanding classic games from more than 20 years ago. However, cases like Resident Evil 3 makes us gamers much more trepidatious as to what purpose a remake actually fulfills. By rethinking the mechanics, restructuring the levels, and obviously updating the graphics of iconic games, something becomes undeniable. They might as well be considered entirely new games in their own right most of the time. Now, while graphic and haptic improvements are the only real information we've been given so far about The Last of Us Part 1, to a huge fan of the series like myself, I immediately began to question, what more could or should the remake bring to the table? Well, let's see.
So as Murphy's Law would have it, as I was 50% done with this video, a whole bunch of leaks happened, and 2 days later, Naughty Dog themselves launched the video/trailer detailing The Last of Us Part 1's features and gameplay. After going back and forth with myself for far too long, I just decided to not waste this video and just add or discuss at the end of each section the new info the developers gave us, since they didn't really reveal everything. So bear with me here and let's go.
When Part 2 finally released, some things became very clear. Well, at least to the obsessives like myself. It was then clear that obviously and inevitably a huge gap now existed between the new release and its predecessor. The graphics alone set the entries apart, sure, but many other visual differences came to be. Previously thought to not even be an option, Part 2 looked and felt in many ways more mature than its predecessor. The new user interface alone was all around much cleaner, more straightforward, ditching the grunginess of the first game. The start screen, for one, a big staple of Naughty Dog's more recent games, was quieter, more ominous, and more directly connected to the outcome of the story than the original The Last of Us. Unifying the visual language of the two parts seems like a given to me, so I'm really hoping they do that. I have a soft spot for the grunge vibes as much as the next millennial, but who can deny a minimalist, more clean-cut visual identity nowadays?
So yeah, that's definitely something they showed in the video that they launched. The visual identity of both the entries is very much the same now and much cleaner and just like white on translucent, and it looks pretty slick in my opinion.
After releasing The Last of Us in June 2013, Naughty Dog surprised all of its newfound fans with the announcement and respective release of its DLC, Left Behind, in February 2014. Left Behind told in a very interesting way the story of how Ellie was, spoiler alert, bitten by infected, only to find out in a tragic manner that she was actually immune to the cordyceps spores that devastated the old world before her. Having now played, accepted, and very much enjoyed the flashback narrative structure of The Last of Us Part 2, I feel like there should be an integration of Part 1 with its DLC in some form. Ellie's story expansion at the time felt so refreshing on top of already having the shift of the main characters halfway through the main game. Whether we noticed or not, those were clearly the seeds being planted for how the subsequent sequel would be structured, and for the most part, it really worked at the time. If Naughty Dog somehow found a way to segue from The Last of Us Part 1 to the events of Left Behind, the overall experience of the game could be heavily enhanced, giving us the option to first play as Ellie very much straight off the bat, with no time to breathe between the university section and the mall section, could actually shape a completely different momentum ramp up. It could give even more weight to knowing more about Ellie, to the David encounter, and all that comes later. Playing it right after Joel falls from his horse, pun intended, could in theory spoil the shift in flow of the game for newcomers when Ellie comes into play. For us more seasoned players, however, I feel like it could be one great way of making it an even fresher experience. I, for one, replayed both the main game and its DLC many more times than I'd like to admit, 18 and a half, so I would love to see how those two could be woven together. On that same note, I think the improvements brought to Left Behind that carried over to Part 2 as well should also be perfected and included to Part 1. Things like improved AI, being able to pit different types of enemies against each other, and so on, especially if it's supposed to be a next-gen game. All of that just needs to be there.
So this part here is very interesting because they didn't necessarily mention anything regarding integrating Left Behind and The Last Last of Us Part 1, but they did mention a lot of stuff regarding improvements in AI, but they were extremely vague and very technical about it. So here's to hoping that pitting enemies against each other and having all in all tougher enemies to deal with is gonna be a thing, because they did specify very thoroughly that buddies are gonna be much better, which was a real problem in the old The Last of Us. They used to break the illusion of the game a lot. So
having said that, I know this goes into more speculative territory, so let me just say it. It would be amazing if Naughty Dog expanded/redesigned The Last of Us levels, even if in small, subtle ways. One thing they could totally do, for instance, is to drill down on deeper exploration, given that in the original release of The Last of Us, exploring meant very little other than restocking your inventory for the most part. Also, it would allow for Naughty Dog to create more scary/tense moments like in Part 2, when you're either ambushed by clickers or surprised by hunters while in a very vulnerable state. Something I adored in Part 2 was how intense and interesting the environmental storytelling was. Spontaneously roaming around and scavenging for new snippets of the old world was my favorite thing to do in the game. I know that the OG The Last of Us already had quite a bit of all that, but if this remake is from the ground up, like they say, exploring should be even more perfected.
this is also something they didn't really go into, but Neil Druckmann at the end of the video really hammered down the idea that they're not gonna make the game different but better.
Thing that allows us to make that experience better. Not different, extremely better.
So that kind of demotivates me a little bit. I know that in practical terms, redesigning levels wouldn't allow this game to come out as fast as it's going to, but you know how it is. I'm a dreamer.
And speaking of the ground up, something that could definitely work towards that better exploration is adding more and better movement to Joel in Part 1. Look, we gotta admit, the man felt heavy as a rock and stiff as a board playing back in hindsight. Sure, it was interesting to have weight and feel to the character's movement, but it has a lot of room for improvement. Part 2 spoiled a lot of us by including the options to jump, prone, and dodge in the game. Jumping adds verticality to levels, proning diversifies stealth play, and dodging refines the combat. By adding those features and coupling it with some form of level designing, so much would already feel different in this remake. Joel sure is a hunk of a man, but he doesn't need to feel like those tree dudes from The Lord of the Rings trying to move every once in a century. In addition to all of this, another critique people had back in the day towards The Last of Us was the simplicity of the combat, which could very much benefit from expanding the possibilities of movement. I mean, realistically, enduring and surviving throughout 20 years of post-apocalypse should have definitely made Joel a decent combatant, so being able to dodge and prone would only make sense as additions for the remake. Honestly, it gives them even more of an opportunity of setting Joel and Ellie apart as playable characters. They already feel different, sure, but if they aim to deliver the definitive version of The Last of Us, then hell, why not give Joel that tune-up that he so well deserves?
So this, I would say, it's the most contentious part of this video, because they did go into a lot of technicalities, like I said before, about the movement of the characters and how much better it is because of a lot of programming stuff, but they did not specify if we're going to be able to dodge, prone, and jump. And at the same time, people would say that it breaks the game if they put that in there, but it also goes against my own point of making Ellie and Joel different characters to play with if he doesn't dodge, prone, and jump. So I guess we're just gonna have to wait on that one.
Finally, I think that another improvement Part 1 could carry over from Part 2 is how customizable your different playthroughs can be. Apart from the obvious new game pluses and adding the improved accessibility features, players should still be able to mix and match different difficulty levels, resource availability, damage sensitivity, and so on. Besides, why replay Part 1 at all once you finish it if the factions multiplayer is not making a comeback? Huge mistake, by the way, in my opinion. Seems to me that replayability is gonna be a big issue for them as soon as this game releases. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they're gonna tackle this. Personally, I'd be happy with a super simple, straight-cut graphics overhaul for factions, period. That is still the only multiplayer mode I've never grown tired of or even tried playing, to be honest, apart from the Killzone series. So I seriously hope they're keeping it under wraps. But I guess we're all gonna have to wait until September to find out.
So yeah, obviously all the accessibility and the features and new modes, permadeath mode, speedrun mode, they're all gonna be in there, which is pretty cool. But I just still can't get over the fact that they are not doing a makeover of the factions mode, because it's just so awesome and it really sucks that it's not coming back.
So there you go. These are some of my tone deaf takes regarding the remaking of The Last of Us. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you made it this far into the video, I appreciate you deeply. Stay hydrated, stay weird, and see you in the next one.